What's up, everyone? This is our weekly chat, Authors After Dark, where I talk with a indie author about their prose, the way they write, how they write, their writing goals. Yeah. And this week's guest is really, really special. We've got Jennifer Hartman, who is the creator of Pagan Kids, which is an online brand and resource, as well as the author of children's books that having to do with Norse mythology. I'm going to invite her really quick and see if we can get her on here. Oh, there she is. Send a request.
From Canada, I believe, still in the Eastern time zone, but I believe she is in Canada. So we'll find out soon. Her first book is done really successfully. There you are!
Hi. Can you hear me properly? There's no humming? Dang it. Okay, so I'll just take that out.
No worries. These things are always full of technical difficulties because that's how life is. It's a live interview.
That's all right. That might be really good for the author readings and stuff. So
yeah, absolutely. You sound great, by the way. I can totally see you and I can hear you. And I'm so excited to talk to you. So I was just talking about too pagankids.org and all of the wonderful things that are available on the website. Not, including things like this, the Wheel of the Year, which you can fill out and, do your own little illustrations, and also your book, Old Mother Frost, which I have, and I have read to my niece. It's wonderful. And one thing I love about it is that in the back, you have all this info about how you came up with the story. And I just want to talk a little bit, and we'll just kick it off with how you decided to start writing these books and begin Pagan Kids, and let you kind of just let us get to know you a little bit. Because I know from your website you have Swedish heritage, but you are Canadian and you currently live in Canada, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Awesome. So I think you're my first Canadian guest, so thanks so much. But yeah, Jennifer, let's just talk real quick about how you got into pagankids.org and developed that brand as well as your book.
Yeah, pagankids.org just kind of started with the frustration of other parents. I'd already started understanding how many resources were lacking for my own kids, being a Scandinavian heritage and not wanting the church to be associated with our, like, not associated, like that's not the right word, but
right.
I didn't want our holidays to be Christian based because we're not really part of that.
Mm-hmm.
So I really just wanted it to be something that I could carry forward my traditions, the traditions that I grew up with that were special to me. Mm-hmm. And my husband really wanted his German traditions to be part of it as well. And we kind of started creating our own holidays based on that. But one of the issues with all of this was all of the stories that we grew up with didn't exist in a book. We couldn't nurture that warm, cozy feeling that people get with their holidays. So I think I searched for months and came up with nothing. I was even trying to find Swedish and German books and came up with nothing. And I was so frustrated that I decided that at first I needed to make sure that my memory of all these tales my mom told me weren't skewed. So I started researching things that way. And then I started compiling a story. That was probably the first step in the direction towards all of this, but I thought I'd make a story for my son and would never see outside my house until I started asking around. And I joined a bunch of Scandinavian Facebook pages who quickly directed me towards the pagan pages because that was everything. And I realized that my belief had a label to it, which was pretty incredible. So from that, I started actually making a book. Enough parents asked for it and said self-publishing was a valid path. And I started learning about self-publishing, and it just kind of became a big roller coaster. And at one point, I decided I need the illustrations to be better than camera filter, and kind of dove headfirst. And my husband was just kind of like, "Wow, this is like really escalating here, honey." Well, now it has to be successful.
Yeah.
So while I made the book, I continued hearing other parents' frustrations when it came to the lack of resources for pagan kids. A big one was free printables, and I just had one moment during the illustration process when I had nothing else to do and said, you know what, I'm going to make some.
Mm-hmm.
So I figured it out. I think I finally have a program where I can actually evolve those printables, but I also work with featured artists in the community so that I can give back to everybody as well.
That's wonderful. And I think, too, one thing that struck me about your website, like, I found you through the author community here on Instagram. And I do a lot of research for my fantasy, and I do a lot of research based in actual history because that's, you got to write something about something. And so I kind of connected with you over my research into Norse mythology and stuff like that, which is incredibly fascinating. And the more I do research for my book, the more I feel like it just kind of escalates until I'm like, this is becoming very complicated, but I get a lot of joy out of it, so I'm just going to keep going. And so I, went on your website, and I think one thing that you do very successfully is you bridge the gap between the book you're trying to sell and also all of this stuff that's on brand for you that also sells the book, but also sells, the whole experience, which includes the printables. And I think any indie author could look at what you've done and see that as kind of an equation for success, because you are giving away free things, but those free things keep your audience engaged, interested, checking in. I got your newsletter this week about the history of Midsummer. I found that I loved reading about that. So all of this, will end up in more sales for these. So I've also just really admired your authorpreneurship, I guess, and that you have a consistency. And I enjoy engaging, and I must be a child at heart because I enjoy engaging with all of your information. And I just wanted to talk too, because that is a lot, not only having the research to develop the books, but also you're putting a lot of that research online and you have to fact check that. And I also know that you're a mom and you have to engage and be present with humans in your life. And you have to write these books. And in the blog post, you talked a little bit about your research method, and I would encourage anyone who really wants to get down to the nitty gritty to check out the blog. You go over it in detail from, splicing timelines based on old stories to make them make sense, and then getting university professors who are learned in that area to check over your stories. I don't know any other children's books, now I could be wrong, but I don't know any other children's books that are getting checked by that level of education. So I just want to talk a little bit about that too. It's time management for you. How do you structure your work week or your day?
I have more bags under my eyes than you think. There's makeup and lighting.
Preach, sister.
So a lot of late nights, no breaks. There was actually a little while ago where things slowed down on all fronts because I got exhausted. Like completely, I think my brain had a meltdown. It actually shut down and went numb because I've just been filling it with so much information. And almost everything you learn about timelines, you start to realize that everything you've ever learned in history has kind of happened recently. And all these timelines interweave. And anyways, my brain couldn't handle it. And I just had a meltdown and I had to start focusing on having fun activities with my son, like going on hikes and just resetting, which is where yoga came back into practice because I needed to focus more on that, which kind of only happens at 11 o'clock at night now. It happens.
It's night yoga. It's night yoga. That's what you can do.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, it's the research kind of, it's a passion and I can't force it. and I've learned that. I'm an avid reader anyways. And if it's not a gazillion of the same book over and over again, it's one of my books. And I used to be really big into fantasy, fantasy, but I've kind of switched my escape in my books to my research books. So yeah, if I'm not online reading other people's blogs, like other academic blogs, I'm usually washing the dishes to university lectures. The studying is kind of more scheduled now because I need some kind of structure there instead of just reading studies all the time.
Yeah.
But I find it's really important if you're going to try to make a book based on a culture or history, or especially like pre-Christian history, if you're really going to decide that you're going to enter this and you don't know what battles you're picking, you need to make sure it's all academically sound. So, and not just for yourself, because I can withstand the heat, but for my son, who's then going to end up going to school, saying, oh yeah, you've got Christmas and my Yule is very similar to that, and look at this. These are the historical facts that I know about it that kind of bring our traditions together in a not so together kind of way. So to me, that was important because I wanted him to feel like he connected to everything.
Yeah.
He wasn't an outsider. He also belongs, but in his own parallel kind of way. And because it is going towards the children, I need to make sure that there's no lies. I need to make sure that I didn't just follow one person's perspective. I wanted to make sure I had the general, broad one. And because I'm in Canada, sometimes I'm worried that I'm missing like certain elements. And my mom tried to raise me as Swedish as possible. I actually didn't speak English until I was 4 or 5. She had me in Svenska skolan in Toronto. And we did like Santa Lucia concerts, which is Christian. But afterwards she would tell me like this gory story about what she heard was like the pagan orgy. So I always had something like this about how the church took the story and ran with it. But yeah, to me it's like, okay, well, Mom, is this a fact? Like, now I need to look into it. Like, how did it evolve? So it's definitely a passion. It's a labor of love, and it's also a bit of pride, because I want my son to be able to, say things with a fact while being able to back it up, which is the reason why the back of Old Mother Frost has fun facts. It tells you where the origins come and everything. And if you really want to look more into it, I do have the family blog on my page. It is kind of more for older kids who can navigate it as well, but I also try my best to target beginners who need the quick tidbits that they can absorb a little bit easier. Because when I was starting out, we had none of this, and we had UPG, so like people were imagining their own stuff. And personally, I want my facts, and then I'll build a story around it. Yeah. At least has some kind of lesson to it. Yeah. So it's important to educate your kids properly. Now, I do have a university professor who usually looks over my books, but my editor is also part Scandinavian, so she looks over all that as well, whatever she can. And then other than that, there are a few leaders in the community as well who have been practicing heathenry their entire lives, and sometimes I'll fact check certain things with them as well. And it's just part of it. It's a simple story that anybody can follow, but it's got layers just like any Christmas book.
It's almost like you are doing your own kind of archaeological dig, because this is a very old story. That's what struck me about all of this. And then who is that in the sky that's coming out? These are all old stories that have somehow managed to keep existing in our consciousness, for a really long time, and get retold and kind of mashed up. And so it's almost like you are kind of wiping away the dirt and the cobwebs to really get to the bones of the story, which is something you mentioned in our blog interview, that you kind of take all of this detritus and history and you clean it up, and then you kind of start to make a linear story out of it, and then you have it fact checked, which is a really interesting method, and it seems to work for you, because I just love this book. And I love that you have such a passion for it. It's really obvious in your IG feed. It's really obvious on your website, I'm just going to fangirl for a moment over you. I just think it's awesome. I really enjoy it. And I selfishly kind of stumbled on you when I was doing research for my own, and I love research, and I love that you were surrounded by really capable people who, you know, don't just have opinions, they have degrees to back up their fact checking, which is incredible. And so right now you are working on your next project, the next children's book, which is Who Is That in the Sky? Can you talk to me a little bit about that?
Yeah, that one, it kind of squeezed itself into my agenda, to be honest. I was rereading the Poetic Edda, and there's in the Voluspa, it goes on about the certain gods in the sky and who's in charge of making sure that we keep track of time for Midgard and in Asgard.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, wait a second, like my son's starting to learn about this stuff as well. And it's not just the gods because they're lesser known, and I can't believe they're lesser known. But it's also stuff about like the sunrise, the sunset, like daytime and everything. And I'm also, while I've written, it's being illustrated, another book. It's the second part of the series for Old Mother Frost. And it's called Midsummer Soul. But I was worried that nobody knows about soul. So this was a great kind of insert there. And I also do in my blogs, I share books that I like for different age groups. It's usually toddlers, young kids, and older kids. But there's nothing for toddlers. There's one or two books by Carrie Overton. And it's like, okay, so that's it, just an ABC book or like a ABC rune book. And it's like, okay, well, we need stories.
Absolutely.
So when I read that, my editor had just finished going over Midsummer Soul, and I wrote her back and I said, hey, I just spent the last 12 hours nonstop writing this book for toddlers. It's nothing. It's honestly just a quick read, but toddlers love it. Just simple 6-page book, simple dialogue, introducing the gods, and this is what I want for it. What's the chances we can throw it in with my package, or just like kick it up a little bit and I'll pay the difference if you need. She's like, oh yeah, that's actually really quick. I'll just do that with the next round of editing for this one, and we'll just send it on. So I found the illustrator who's perfect for it accidentally. He'd been commenting on a Facebook page for a while, and I decided I really wanted the light effects because it's cosmic. So I ended up hiring him. So now I'm working on 2 books at the exact same time. I just lied. But yeah, Who's That in the Sky just kind of exploded onto my lap, and I decided it needed to happen. We needed more books out there, which is kind of how Old Mother Frost started, but more slowly. I was a lot more gentle and careful with my first book. I didn't want to set myself up for failure. I didn't want to, I just wanted to take it slow and careful and steady. And now that I've got a lot of these services in place to make them real, it happens a lot faster, but still just trying to take it slow and being careful.
Yeah.
Who's That in the Sky? I actually ended up rehiring a formatter for it because it wasn't perfect. Like I liked it, but I didn't love it. So it's the formatting is always the most expensive part, because you have to get somebody who understands your vision. And yeah, I think Old Mother Frost was perfect. That just ended up working just great. Who's That in the Sky? I don't think the person really understood, and now I have somebody I randomly found. She's from the UK. and she's been following me for quite some time on Pagan Kids, so she's actually invested in this as well. I'm really excited to carry on with her, and hopefully she'll be my solid formatter going forward.
Awesome. So do you think Who Is That in the Sky still will be slated for a fall release, or do you think maybe more Christmas?
Yeah, for the UK formatter is actually fast tracking it, and yeah, she understands I want to run the Kickstarter for it next month, so she's making sure that it's all done by then, so I can get it out to the world. Hopefully, I have a timeline set, but I'm hoping everything will be sent from the warehouse in October. So whoever orders it in October, it'll be sent out. And by doing it that way, hopefully I won't get any of the mail delays that happened last year with the COVID postage prices.
Yeah, who knows? Who knows? But hopefully, fingers crossed. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit. You'd mentioned a few steps to creating the end result. You know, we've talked about research and development, time management, a little bit on drafting, and then you, in that last comment, touched a little bit on format. And that is something I am actually wildly uninformed about because I write fiction, I write chapter books. And so I imagine the formatting is quite different for children's books, and so you hire a separate formatter. For anyone who is dreaming of being a children's book author, could you just give me kind of a play-by-play of once you have your draft of your story and you found your artist, what happens next? Your artist creates images, and then you also have a formatter that works with your artist. What does that work entail?
It depends on what company you go with. I haven't had the luck yet in getting an illustrator who also does my formatting and licensing and barcoding. I think you have to get your own licensing anyways, but the stage anyways, you write your story, you get it edited, you get your illustrations done, and then once your illustrations are getting done, you apply for an ISBN number for any kind of format you want. So my hardcover has one number and my paperback has another number. And if you were to have a board book, you would need another number. And then from there, you can get a copyright as well. I think the only book I've copywritten or I've had a copyright for, is Who Is That in the Sky, because the manuscript is super simple, and it's possible that somebody could read it and then in 15 years think that they had this brilliant idea and rewrite it. It would be fairly easy, so I just made sure that was protected for just in case. But yeah, Old Mother Frost, I would love if somebody took inspiration from this book and rewrote it, because then I would have a second book for my son for my library. And I say that a lot. It's like, you know what, I know it's encouraging competition, but I want it. I want more than one book on my shelf for you.
Absolutely. So that is your actual shout out right now to anyone considering writing children's books. Here is a niche need, underrepresented stories. And these are old stories, which is the crazy part. And I think there is a valid interest. I mentioned it to my mother, who does some crafts, and she said that she's been looking for Norse children's books at her local library. And I think she's found a few, but they're not quite to this level. They're much more informative and less of a story, which is, you want a story.
Yeah, exactly.
Speak Your Own Book, who is listening to this interview, says, we are currently writing a Wheel of the Year series for children. That's awesome. We're so excited about that. So yeah, I think there are other folks, and I think self-publishing has really opened the door for a lot of these stories to be published that perhaps a major publisher just didn't think there was the audience for. But the one thing I've learned from Instagram is there is an audience for your book. No matter what your book is about, there's an audience for your book. There's someone that wants to read it. There is someone that is waiting to fall in love with it. And Speak Your Own Book says that was a Pagan Kids idea too. Thank you. So yeah, you definitely got some fans on here, some folks that really love you. Just to kind of wind up the interview today, it's been so lovely to chat with you. I want to talk a little bit about Midsummer Soul, which I am really excited about that one. That's coming out next spring, is what it's looking like, spring 2022. And that one is kind of, you said it's kind of a companion to Old Mother Frost. Do you mean companion in that it's a seasonal book?
Yeah, it's so I call it like the Celebration series. It wasn't an official name because I thought Old Mother Frost was going to be a one-off. But just like Yule, I grew up with Midsummer, the Midsummer Festival, singing Smugglerna, but kind of humming it because I wasn't sure what the heck was going on. But you like dance like a little frog, and it's completely ridiculous. You dance, you essentially have a party with your family, and that one was kind of more difficult because with Yule, you kind of have like a structure already. But with Midsummer, I just know you dance, you go outside, you dance, you have fun. So I wasn't sure how to do it all, and that goddess was a bit easier to find than Frau Hole. But it took a while to get that manuscript down and to kind of understand Midsummer. Oh my goodness. Yule at least is a big celebration. Midsummer, there's hardly any historical attestations, but thankfully we have kings and lawmakers who said, I don't like how you do this, and explains in detail what they don't like, and then goes ahead and says, now it's banned.
Yeah.
So we have some documents either in the law books, on the stabs. We don't have, I think we might have something written in a saga by Adam Bremen. But yeah, there's not a lot. So that one, that blog that you saw, I spent 2 months reading just one of those studies that I cite and taking it out in time frames. Trying to write it down, and there was a few twigs that died that day. But trying to get everything in order, because what a lot of studies do is it's like, oh, this person said this, and then this person from over here said something that might contradict it, and then somebody from this generation said something that might contradict it. So my thing was, but wait, who was the closest person to this, and who lived in it, who heard it next, and then built on it, and who based on archaeology. Like, if you're going to be a historian now and you're going to contradict everything that everybody else is saying, why? What have you found? It needed to go down in order so that people could follow the evidence. And then I could understand what's going on and what's actually part of Midsummer, instead of reading a study that bounces all over the place and just going with whatever their conclusion is.
Right.
So, again, Midsummer ends up, that was a lot more research intensive. The studies were easier to find, but harder to understand. And now it's a book. it's a about Soul, and there are a couple plot holes. I have that up on my, or maybe 1 or 2 plot holes that I have up on my Patreon. So if anybody wants to, my historical plot holes they're there.
Okay. So you mentioned a few avenues that anyone that really is into your stuff can support you on. Not mentioning Kickstarter earlier for Midsummer Soul. There's going to be a Kickstarter, is what you said, and you also have a Patreon page for, I guess, helping you figure out those plot holes. Are there any other ways we can, if someone is really into you and has already purchased your book, that they can support you besides Patreon and Kickstarter?
Yeah, I have a shop. But I mean, that's another thing that accidentally happened. Some child was being bullied by the teacher because they didn't like the symbols that they were wearing. But the parent wanted them to feel like they could be proud of it, just like anybody else. So I kind of whitewashed everything and kind of made a basic white girl clothing line shop. But it says, it has like some of the gods on it. It has like strong like Freya, or Loki made me do it, or wise like Odin. It's a little owl with an eye patch.
That's fun.
It's all simple designs, but they're fun, and kids can wear it to school, and teachers won't think anything of it. All the proceeds there, I've priced all the children's clothes as low as possible, because people shouldn't pay an arm and a leg for children's clothing.
Mm-hmm.
I make $1 or $2 per order, but that goes directly into my books. So
Great.
yeah.
And you get to have a little fan shirt. I looked at some of them for my nieces. I have two nieces that, you know, get all the books and fun clothing items from Auntie. So I definitely scoped some of that out, which is really fun. Again, with branding, you've created an online presence that really lets someone engage with your world and your work. And I just can't say enough great things about it. It really drew me in, just because I was doing similar research. I've been doing research with witchcraft and some paganism and like modern paganism for a book I'm writing. And I found the more I researched, the more I'm quite interested in this subject, actually. And I was, you know, kind of like talking about the Wheel of the Year and like Ostara, and I was thinking, oh, there must be a goddess Ostara. And then you kind of research, and you're like, oh, this is kind of just the soup pot of all the stories we put in about spring. And there was and I'm going to butcher her name, an Eostre or Easter, Eostre. I don't know how to say that. No.
You know, it's kind of like a part of it's ancient German, part of it's kind
Yeah.
of New Age English. Not entirely sure how to say it. I think it's Ostra.
Ostra, I believe you over me. You know, you're doing the research. I'm just showing up to do the interview. The more I've kind of engaged with that, the more I'm like, you know, there isn't, you know, Christianity has done a great job of like having this Bible, having this book that has all of their, you know, dare I say, mythology surrounding their religion, and paganism doesn't have that. Right? Am I totally off base here? It's more of a belief system that different cultures have passed down.
Yeah, it's kind of the best way I like to say it is it's like ancient folklore. And when you couldn't write all these stories down, they were passed verbally. And it's the reason why I know about these stories is because it's just something that Swedish kids know. It's something German kids know because their parents told them, their grandparents told them, their great, you know, it just keeps going down. And honestly, the Viking Age wasn't that long ago when you think about how many great grandparents came from then. So that was one of the things with researching all these timelines is, you know, it's a lot closer than you think it is.
Yeah.
Like Canada was built less than 200 years ago, and the Viking Age ended in the 12 to 1400s. So it's actually quite incredible how close everything was. But yeah, most of it, every town, every tribe, every country had their own traditions, and there's going to be different calendars for that, depending on how people kept it or observed it. So it ends up becoming a very personal practice. Not one way is right because your family might have celebrated it a different way. You can find your own tribe and celebrate it together that way. Like, it really just depends. But if, like, say you're from Germany, you're going to have several tribes that have several different ways to practice. So in the end, it's whatever feels right for you. It's your intuition. All we have is these stories that were told around a village and evolve or devolve.
That's so fun. That thread from the past is still very present in what you're doing today. That's so fascinating and wonderful. Thank you so much for chatting with me today. Is there anything else you'd like to talk about that I haven't covered in terms of your work that you just would like your fans to know?
Honestly, it's just ever evolving. So just keep watching. There's probably something exciting every month. And yeah, thanks for all your support, guys. If I'm missing anything, let me know because I'm here for the community just as much as you're here for me.
Oh, awesome. So just to recap, Jennifer Hartman of Pagan Kids. Her website is pagankids.org. She has some wonderful printables there, as well as, I haven't filled it out yet. I'm horrible at crossword puzzles. But they're even crossword puzzles. Do these over coffee. Just see how much you already know. That's a fun quiz. And if you want to support her besides buying her book, she does have a Patreon. Check it out. And also, if you want to support her upcoming release of Midsummer Soul, due in spring 2022, That is available also on Kickstarter. Yeah. Anything else? I think I got it all. She's wonderful. Totally follow her. Thank you so
Oh
much.
my goodness! I forgot. Midsummer Soul is being translated to German now. So all of my German followers who are out there, it's happening. I think that one will be released on Kickstarter for pre-orders next month. So after Who's That in the Sky is out, Frau Hole will be coming out as well.
Awesome. That is wonderful. Awesome. Well, I will let you get on with the rest of your day. I know you've got tons of stuff to do, probably research, children rearing, building books, all that stuff. I really appreciate your time and just giving me a chat and you being you and putting your art and your story out in the world. It's been great getting to know you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. See you next time. And that's it for Authors After Dark, y'all.